Hello everyone and welcome back to Introduction to OPCloud. In today's video we're going to show you the ability to create a submodel according to a subsystem that you have. Please note that this is a first implementation of this feature, and later on we will add more capabilities to handle model and submodels in OPCloud. Let's first start with the general idea of what we're aiming at. We're aiming at to have the ability to create a model, a main model, and beneath it in location inside the model where you have some kind of subsystem, you want to create a submodel of that subsystem so other modelers can work on it on the same time. Please note that since we are aiming to not only give this capability in the OPCloud, but also maintain OPM integrability and way of modeling and methodology, it will not give all the options that you can have. So let's start, and I will explain as we go how to use it and what are the capabilities that you can currently do. The first thing you need to understand is that we're aiming for having a submodel of a subsystem, meaning that we're aiming to have the minimal impact point and interaction point between the main model and the subsystem, meaning that if we have a very unique model with several subsystems, the interconnection between the main model and its subsystem will be as minimal as possible in order for us to allow the ability to work on those two different models or several models at the same time. So without further ado, let's start how we're doing it. The first thing we need to do is how to select and to create a submodel. Here I've created a basic main model that we will create submodel from it. So we have the system diagram as regularly in OPM. We have the main system doing, main input, output, beneficiaries, and so on. So once we go into the system diagram, I've selected an asynchronous system in order us to give the ability to create a subsystem. Not only it will be more coherent that way, but it will be most optionable to use. So we've created several functionalities of our main system. And here I've created, for example, two main subsystems, subsystem 1 and subsystem 2. Now, in order to create a submodel, we need to select the things that we want to share between the main model and the submodel. Please note that those shared things will have limitation into them. So the first thing we need to do is to select them. We have some constraint. First of all, you cannot select a thing that it is already refined, meaning has more things connected to it in lower OPDs and so on. Otherwise, you won't be able to control it. So we want to start like that. So let's start with the submodel. The main thing that we need to do is to select the minimal thing. Minimal thing of a subsystem in OPM is an object and its process, which connected to him by exhibition characterization link, and we have also the instrument link. This is the minimal thing that you must select in order to create a submodel. You can add on that other objects, but it can only contain one process. Why? As we said, this is a view of a subsystem. It is a standalone subsystem, let's say. So for now, we can select. Once we select it, you will be able to see the new icon of connect submodel, meaning creating it. In our example, let's select not only those two objects, but also the main output of that object. So now we have 3, and let's create our submodel. Once you will click on the submodel, you will be able to see that we have a name that we can give. So let's give it the name subsystem 1. As it is subsystem 1, you will be able to understand that the name of the submodel will be only controlled from the main model. You will not be able to change it outside. The connection between the main model and the submodel will be maintained as long as they are connected together. So once we've selected them, selected the name, we click the Create Submodel. Now, as you can see, the submodel is created. Let's go over a little bit what we can see. We can see there is a green icon. This green icon means that the submodel is loaded into the main model, and also it is synchronized. We'll touch about it a little bit later. You can see now that there is new options on the OPD tree menu. First, if I will click on it, you can see that the regular OPD tree menus of the OPDs have remove, expand, collapse, and hide names. But if we are talking about a submodel, we have other options. First of all, we have the rename. If you want to change the name of the submodel, please note that it is also affecting the name of the submodel in the file system. We can open it on a new tab from here or disconnect it from the main model. We will show it a little bit later. So first of all, let's open it in a new tab. Now, please note that you can work on both of them in parallel. It is not a must to be working on as the same modeler. You can give different permission like you regularly do. You can select the permission and so on and pass it like any other model that you have, aside from the limitation of a submodel. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the name. If I will open the folders, you can see that the main model is here, and the submodel will always be in the same folder of the main model. The name of the subsystem will always be the name of the subsystem that we're giving it, of the name of the main model. In our case, main model system, subsystem. You will not be able to change it from here. You cannot delete it just from here. Otherwise, you will have problem. We'll talk about it later on. Now, as you can see, as I've selected the things, they are now transparent. Those things that are transparent, meaning that they are shared between the model and submodel in this level, and you will be able to see that once I will go in a submodel, you will see that the submodel itself is also transparent. Once we will add more things into it, they will also be transparent in the main model, but they will be editable and so on in the submodel. Let's continue to work on the submodel. We can take it from here and continue refining our model. For example, we'll take it and we'll do in zoom for the first process. So we'll take it here and we'll do in zoom. You will be able to see that we can do it. We can arrange it whatever we want to arrange. You can see that now the sub processes are colored regularly. They are not transparent as they are only part of the submodel. We can also create other new objects and connect them. For example, let's say for later on, we will create the ability to do calculations, including submodel. It will be on a different video. So now we connected it. We can change it into computation. We can give it an alias of total cost and connect it into the subsystem output. Then we can save it. As you can see, once it is saved, the icon here changed into yellow, meaning the submodel is loaded, but it is not synchronized. So we have basically three options. We have it unloaded, we have it loaded and synchronized, and loaded and unsynchronized. In order to maintain the ability to work fast and easily, we're working with what we call lazy loadout, meaning that once you open a main model or refresh your browser, it will not fetch the submodels and it will not load them. And if you have several submodels, each time you fetch one of them, it will only fetch that specific one and will not fetch all of them. Otherwise, if we're aiming for a very main model with subsystem and those subsystems have their own subsystem, which is possible to do, then you don't want to get everything on the same time. Otherwise, it will be hard on the communications and networking and time of loading everything. So you can just split it and get whatever you want to get. But if you want to synchronize, the only option currently is to unload what you have and then load what you need to get. Unloading is using this button. As you can see, there is the tooltip saying that it will reset and unload all previously loaded submodels. If you have several, but only some of them, it will only discard of the loaded ones. And then you can see that it turned into yellow. Now I will fetch it. It is green. And you can see that I can see the submodel. And now if I will go to the other parts, you will be able to see that it fetched whatever I've updated and saved. You need to save the submodel in order for the main model to take into consideration the synchronized part. Another thing you need to know that the checking if the submodel is synchronized or not on the main model is up to 30 seconds. So it is not instantaneously, but it will take up to 30 seconds. It can be less depending on the heat on the server. So let's go a little bit back and see what we can add. As you can see, it is here marked as transparent, meaning those are the shared model. You are able to reuse the shared model on the main model, the shared things, sorry, but you won't be able to refine them or outgoing fundamental links into them, meaning, for example, if I want to add an object and then connect it from here, you will see that there is a warning, you cannot do it. You may, however, connect it to a different subsystem with regular links and so on, with the procedural links. This is why, because we don't want to have more connection inside one model of a different submodel. Can you use submodel parts within the main model? You cannot, meaning that you can use them for calculations and take it into consideration if you're using their ancestry by the shared things, but you won't be able to search for them and see them here in order to drag them, meaning that if I will look for the total cost, there isn't total cost here. But it doesn't mean that the model doesn't know them or can see them as a whole. What do I mean? I mean that you can click on the shared things, and here, if you will look for the total cost, you will be able to see them once you will select whatever you need to do. If I select everything. So this is the option to look for and see the entire submodel. So what we've seen now, we've seen that the minimal thing to connect is an object and a process connected with instrument link and exhibition characterization link. You can add more object, but you cannot add more processes. They must be unrefined and not connected. You're not able to, the shared model in the main model, change them. You can only do it, the shared thing, in the submodel. What do I mean? For example, if I want to use the subsystem output and give it alias, I can do it from here. I can give it subsystem 1 output, so I can add alias and save it. And then when I go to the main model, I will need to unload and then reload it, and you will be able to see that I've got the new alias and I can see it. Now, if, for example, I want to add more things or change, I can only do it in the sub model. I can change the name. If I want to change the name, I can change it here. I cannot add states to the shared things. I cannot delete them here, but I can change, if it's a computational process, I can change the actual computation or the value, meaning I can change the value if it was a computational thing, so I can change its value and so on. Let's talk a little bit about the numbering. As you can see here, if I'm in the submodel, we have it numbered regularly, SD, SD1, and so on. If I will take the process here and I will unfold it and I will save it, you can see that it is SD1.1. Now let's go to the main model. I can unload it and again reload it, and you can see that I've reached to the different model, and now the numbering is according to the father model. As you can see, it 1, SD1, 1, 1, and so on. It will be relative according to the model that you're in. So this is how you use and create a model and submodel, and what can you add and what can you do and change with the shared things between the main model and the submodel, and how you can connect and do whatever you want to do. Now let's talk about deleting or changing. As we said, there is two options to rename, only one option, sorry, to rename it under the rename. You cannot do it from the main menu, load or save. You cannot do it from here. If you want to disconnect and have separate models, what you need to do is right click and then click on the disconnect submodel on the main model. You will be able to prompt a specific option. You need to approve it. Please note it is unreversible, meaning you will not be able to reconnect. Currently, you cannot select an existing model as a submodel. You can only get out, create a new submodel from an existing main model and move along with it. Once you disconnect it from the main model, you will go to the submodel, and here there is a new icon of disconnect. Again, clicking on it will give you a prompt that you will need to click and approve in order for it to be disconnected. Please note that you must disconnect it in both locations and save, both on the main model and both on the submodel. As I said before, you can do submodel, two submodels, etc. You can nest one another. Once you fetch a model, a submodel in a main model, it will also fetch its sub-model, and so on. Another thing that it is important to understand, when you export a model, you will be able to export its submodel according to what is currently here. If the model is synchronized and loaded, it will be included in the export. If it's unloaded, it will not be included unless you select to do it. For example, if I'm going to export and we're doing the export of OPL, you're able to see there is a new checkbox. The default is checked. If the submodel are not loaded, it will load it automatically. If you don't want to bring everything in order to export it, you can uncheck it. In the export PDF part, you will be able to see there is, again, this submodel, and if you're using the select OPDs to export, it will fetch them at that instance. Otherwise, it will fetch them on the save unless it is unchecked. So this is how you export models. Now, another thing that you want to make sure is you will not be able to add more shared things between models. So you must really think what is the needed things from the main model that you want to take into the sub model that you're creating, the subsystem. As I said here, for example, if I have here the subsystem 1 and first processing, and then I have here subsystem 1 output, and I forget to include it here, I will not be able to add later on the subsystem 2 output into the new subsystem. The only option will be to disconnect it and recreate a new submodel. So please, when you create a submodel, do it very, very carefully, thinking ahead. Also, the best practice is to think about what the input that you want to get in order to use it. You will be able to use it in the subsystem, and what is the output you want to get from the subsystem. So you will be able to use it in the main model, and you won't need to rethink and rebuild everything again. Just reuse it and then refine it as you can go. So this is how we're going to use this system. Now, in order for us to continue our example, I will create and disconnect the subsystem 2. So again, I've selected the minimal thing for this example. I will not save it here, so we can redo it later on. I click the connect. I will give the name subsystem 2, and I will create the submodel. As you can see, it is created. I can open it in a new tab, and this is how it is. Second, you can see that I don't have it. I won't be able to reselect them and recreate them. How do I delete them? If I will again see it here, I cannot delete it, and so on. So I right-click on the node and click disconnect submodel and click disconnect. You can see that now it is removed. Go back, I can see that it is not transparent anymore. And once I click save, we don't see it. If we go to the subsystem, we need to do this connection here too. So I disconnected it here. And from now on, this is a regular model that I can do whatever, just like a new model that I've just created. Clicking save, and once I open it, I can select it. I can delete it entirely. And it is an open model, so first of all, of course, you need to close it, and then I can select it and delete it. So this is our new feature of model to submodel. You can work with it, give permission to different modelers, have it import, unload, synchronize, unsynchronize. I hope you will find it useful, and I truly believe that this is a great step for having a vast OPM model of entire system with all of its aspects, going both deeper and wider. In the next video, we're going to discuss how to use it in computational and simulations. And this is for the more advanced options. And I hope to see you take advantage of those options too. Thank you, and see you again on the next videos.